Sports Talk Chicago. Here for Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's a college football broadcaster for Fox Sports and a 40-plus year sports media veteran. Please welcome Tim Brando to the program. Tim, it's great to have you on. How are you?
Thank you, John. It's good to be with you.
What's wrong with college football right now, Tim?
Actually, John, I don't think a lot is. I'm actually getting a lot of pushback from people wanting me to say that this is a disgrace. And I'm one that was always a proponent of breaking away from the NCAA. I was one that felt that college football was leaving a lot of money on the television table. Now some steps are being made to make sure that cheese is made and that we get better games and we get a better postseason. I think all of this that's happening are in a lot of ways growing pains that's brought on from years of neglect. The NCAA didn't do what it needed to do with either NIL or the transfer portal. Either one of those would have been tough enough had they happened by themselves. And instead, they happened simultaneously. College sports is in grave need of revenue streams, particularly in the wake of COVID and in the wake of players now being a lot more intelligent and saying, hey, what about us? We want some money too. And, NIL, as it relates to the way it's actually been structured across the board, is not nearly as negative a thing as the media would have you believe. What happened with the young man Jernigan from Pitt going to SC, it wasn't really about NIL. He had a year left. He wanted to improve his stock. And SC with Lincoln Riley was a good place to go. And the fact that he's going to make a hell of a lot of money, well, NIL is in play now. The kid's a senior. So he's only got 1 year to really make it. So why not? Why should we be upset with the fact that he is? I think that was overblown. But we do need to calm the waters, so to speak, of name, image, and likeness. And because we do have unrestricted free agency with no salary cap. And that was certainly not what the intention of the NCAA was when they said we'll allow for name, image, and likeness. And they did so kicking and screaming. They went to the Supreme Court this time a year ago. The Supreme Court voted them down 9-0. It was like, what are you thinking? The NCAA was just asleep at the switch for, a long time. And I think that this was proof to the commissioners of college football that we need to get the hell away from the NCAA. And this is the first significant step of that. I'm not saying it won't be in existence. The NCAA has a purpose, particularly with the men's basketball tournament. It helps fund all of the non-revenue producing sports championships. It certainly knows how to handle Division II and III college football and the NAIA to go along with those that are competing at the FCS level. That's good. That's what they need to govern. College football Division I has outgrown the NCAA. And these schools and conferences now, they want to have people that are in their world impacting and governing their sport. Not some Division II women's soccer coach being on the football rules committee. And that happens, by the way, in the past. It's crazy, but it happens. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about much of what's gone on and will go on because a lot of people in the media either A, don't understand how college football at the Division I level evolved, and some of them just frankly don't like college football, and they're looking to find something else, some other new way to throw a grenade its way. But I think college football is going to be just fine.
Which team shift was the most surprising to you that you saw?
Well, I think the timing of what USC and UCLA did surprised everyone. But I'm not surprised. Okay, am I surprised at the timing? Yes. But was I surprised that it happened the way it did? Sure, because it's hard to keep a secret now. And clearly the people I work for at Fox can keep a secret. We figured that one out. But at the same time, the impact of what they did, USC and UCLA, has such a broad and seismic impact on the entirety of the sport, because now we literally have a bunch of schools at a lot of different conferences that are waiting with bated breath for Notre Dame to make up its mind as to whether they're going to go in a league or not. And until they make a decision, I don't think anything will happen. Notre Dame holds the cards, whether they decide to stand pat as an independent or take that money, which is going to be significantly more revenue from the Big Ten than they currently have as an independent with NBC. That's the decision. I've always felt that Notre Dame had an opportunity for its cake and the chance to eat it too financially. This is that ultimate call, because we're talking over $100 million in television revenue. That's more than even Notre Dame as an independent can command. And Swarbrick knows that. So it's really up to Jack to determine what they're going to do. By the way, to a larger point, since I mentioned Jack Swarbrick, he, along with Greg Sankey and Craig Thompson, who's the commissioner of the Mountain West, and outgoing commissioner Bob Bowlesby of the Big 12, they were the quartet that organized and did all the research on expanding the playoff format. And they brought to everyone within the CFP their proposal to go to 12 schools for the playoff. Interestingly, the two guys that voted against it, George Kliavkov, the commissioner of the Pac-12, and Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC. Now, tell me which conferences need an expansion of the playoff more than those two. They wonder why they're in the position they're in. They can look in the mirror, because that was a poor decision that they made. We're ultimately, and this is the other great part about what's happening, when these new TV deals are all done, and the Big Ten is first, Big 12 and Pac-12 come after that. And who knows, we may have some form of merger or cannibalization that I don't know about, but from one league to the other. It could be two deals or it might be one. Who knows? But once those deals are done and the college football playoff contract comes up for 2026, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind we're going to go to at least 12 teams. We will get a 12-team playoff. And again, that's another great thing about what's happening here. College football needs to reclaim the month of December away from the NFL, and they need to reclaim New Year's Day away from everything. And putting together a 12-team playoff with that much more television inventory and potentially a network deal with two, not one, network can help the sport mightily. A little bit of the NFL blueprint in terms of how you deal with television is a good thing for college football. But this notion that we're turning it into the Premier League, and it's the Big Two, and then everybody else is we're going to see the same 64, 65 teams playing at the highest level of college football. And we'll still see some teams like a Cincinnati when they were in the American Conference. Who knows what team it might be in the future. But teams out of the American or the Sun Belt or the Mountain West will still have a chance to make their case. And frankly, if they do, with 12 teams, there's no way you can keep them out. With 4 teams you could, but with 12, there's no way you can keep a team like that from being in the postseason.
Tim Brando here on Sports Talk Chicago. Amazing insight, Tim, on this playoff. What's your response to those who say it's going to be watered down if you add 12 teams?
How do you know? Who anointed you Nostradamus? Okay. To the contrary, I think having more teams with opportunities, and for those schools that would fall into the category of being seeded somewhere between 7 and 12, okay, it would be huge, because the opening round would go back to the campuses. Okay, the top 4 teams get, because of college football's regular season and it mattering, right? Those first 4 teams get buys. So you have 6 playing 11 at the home site of number 6, 7 playing, and so on. Okay, 7 playing 12, 6, 11, and so on and so forth. And if a team like that wins one game, it's like a national title to that school, and excitement. And what if a team gets hot It's true in all sports. Sometimes a week off brings rust to one of the top seeds. And a team that just played well the week before has got a lot of mojo working. And it'll also bring a lot of fans that ordinarily would never be that keen on watching a college football game to the televisions. We'd have a lot more eyeballs on college football if we incorporated a system that brought all of our nation's geography into the mix. And that's what's been missing. College football has been, especially during the CFP era, a Rust Belt, Sun Belt only need apply postseason. Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, a form of LSU. I mean, someone like either, name your two SEC schools, throw in Clemson and Ohio State, and that's basically who you're going to get. And that kind of boredom around the rest of the country with no one else really being involved is not good for the sport. If I can tell you in July or August who the 4 teams are going to be and be right on 3 of them, that's not good. Okay, that was like picking the NBA Eastern and Western Finals teams for 15 years. And the NBA has gone to hell. So why would you want to do that? And that's what college football has done. And I think this is going to open it up and bring some fresh people to the party.
You've been around the game for 40 years. Have you ever expected this sort of shift in college football from when you started to today?
Yeah, I did. In fact, I talked about it. People thought I was out of my mind. So much of this, when I was working at ESPN, we started Gameday back in 1987. That was 35 years ago. I told this to Bino, and he was, Brando, you're out of your mind. It might help. It'll be after I die. It might happen while you're still alive. And I was like, yeah, I think it will. And in my days at CBS, when the godforsaken BCS was put in play, and I just absolutely annihilated it. I was the self-proclaimed antichrist of the BCS. Same was true. I just thought, okay, fine. One is playing 2, so you got the Big Ten and the Pac-12 involved, right? Because in the past, due to the Rose Bowl, that you could never get those 2 together. We had those so-called split titles all the way up until the USC one with LSU in 2003. I was like, this is not, how do we know? It's still 2 teams. And these computers, do we know who's running these computers? We later found out that half of them were biased because they were set up in Virginia. And oh, by the way, Virginia Tech is number 1 in that poll. Come on. So it was less than forthright, okay, some of what was going on, even with the BCS. And frankly, I still believe the formula they used, the BCS, was better than this committee of people just looking at teams as though they're in a beauty pageant on a runway, telling me that this or that team is just better because. Well, I just think so. Really, that's what you think. That was even worse. So, and actually, if you think about the BCS, Boise State really had a chance a couple of times and missed field goals, or they could have crashed the party big time. In the CFP, there was no chance for a team like Boise State until Cincinnati got a huge break last year, not only winning every game, but also having Oklahoma State, a 1-loss team in the Power Conference, lose to Baylor. That opened the door. There's no doubt in my mind that Cincinnati would not have gotten in had Oklahoma State won that game. So we needed this. And so the answer to you is yes. I know this makes a lot of people upset with me because they feel like I should be a traditionalist. I should be, and I am in a lot of ways. But I don't think we're losing rivalries, and I don't think we're losing history and tradition. I don't. I just think we're going to get better games, more good games on TV during the regular season, and a hell of a lot better postseason than we currently have.
What sort of recommendations do you have to improve the playoff, specifically the committee part of it? Because you mentioned that the committee is obviously has its issues.
Let's take some of the heat off of them. let's let teams earn their way in. If you have 12 teams, hey, go out and win something. Okay. Win your championship, however you want to determine it, whether it's through the best team in the regular season or your championship game, if it's a championship game with two teams from two different divisions, or most leagues now are getting away from the divisional thing and going with their top two teams, which I think is smart. But win something, okay? And then after you have the champions of those leagues, then you allow for, especially with 12 teams, you allow for the best two teams from non-power conferences, okay? And let's, for argument's sake, say that we only have 4 conferences instead of 5, okay, by the time we get to these new television deals. Let's say there's some sort of deal made between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, some kind of merger of some sort, so that they kind of come together and you still have an ACC. And that the ACC held on to what they needed to, although I'm not sure that they will. But they have a TV deal that lasts a long time and a grant of rights that lasts a long time. So let's say they hold on to Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and all those schools. So those four league champions are in, okay? And then we say of the other conferences that are left between the American, the Sun Belt, the Mountain West, and the MAC, let's say the top team from that group, the highest rated team from that group is locked in. Okay, the version of Cincinnati of this year, that the best team of that group would be automatically in. Highest ranked champion of a group of 5 or group of 4 remaining conferences. All right, whatever that is. And then we have wild cards. Okay, those wild cards can come from anywhere. You figure the SEC would gobble up maybe 1, possibly 2. Big Ten the same. A team that got hot the second half of the year, maybe dropped a game early. Wasn't playing as great in the beginning of the season as they were at the end. Has a chance to get in and really mess things up, and make it fun. There are several teams. Think about all those great Florida State teams Bobby Bowden had through the years that lost to Miami because of a wide right. And they went out and won every other game after that, but still couldn't get in the championship. I think they had a run of 14 straight years where they finished in the top 5 of the AP poll. 14 straight years of finishing no worse than 5 in the AP poll. And they only played in 3 national championships, won 2 of them. So that's something to think about. Teams that get hot at the end of the year that you really don't want to play. That equation never comes into the college football mindset. And now we're bringing that into it, which makes it so good for new fans and potential fans you're looking to attract.
Who do you feel like is going to be in the championship game this year, at least in the playoff?
Wow. Well, at the risk of sounding boring, it's the usual suspects, right? Who's not going to vote Alabama number 1 and Georgia number 2, Ohio State 3, or some version of that? You can mix and match. Those 3 are going to be 1, 2, and 3. We just don't know what order. And you'd probably go with Clemson 4, right? I mean, that's more than likely what you do, which, again, as I said, makes it a classic bore. That's why, if we were debating about who's going to be, think about in November, if we had, say, a game between Iowa and Wisconsin, always a pretty competitive Big Ten game, played in November, whether the game is at Kinnick Stadium or if it's at Camp Randall, it's going to be a monster atmosphere. Those 2 teams are almost always ranked somewhere between 10th and 15th or 16th. In the past, the winner of that game might win the West, right, to go play in the Big Ten title game against Ohio State or Michigan, but most likely Ohio State. Imagine that game, what importance it would take on, not even figuring in the Big Ten, but figuring in the national race, because you're trying to finish in the top 12. The winner of that game takes a giant step, towards being in the top 12. There'll be a lot of games like that in different conferences that would mean so much more in the month of November for more people to watch television, to watch college football. than we currently have. It just opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Tim Brando, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Tim, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, your career. How'd you get your start?
Oh, God. You just Google me. It's all there. I started with my father in 1971, called my high school football game on KLIC radio in Monroe, Louisiana. I was a ninth grader at Lakeshore Junior High in my hometown of Shreveport. My dad had been in the radio and television business, helped put a couple of TV stations on the air. He bought a piece of a hotel in Monroe, not far from where I went to college, now known as ULM, Louisiana Monroe. It was Northeast Louisiana back then. And a guy that owned a radio station came to see my dad one day, heard he was in town, and said, I need some help. The guy that called Neville High School football, which was, it still is, a huge high school, dominant, powerful school in the top classification of high school football in our state. I said, we need somebody. Can you help us out? And my dad, knowing how badly I wanted to be a play-by-play man, said, sure, I'll be happy to help you out. You have to let me pick my partner, my second banana, my color analyst. And of course, the guy had no idea it was going to be his 14-year-old son, but it was. And so we did our first game together, Captain Shreve High School, which happened to be in my hometown in Shreveport, and Neville, September 10th, 1971. So it's been 51 years this September 10th that I've been, calling ball. And I called ball. I stopped playing football in the 8th grade after I went to do these games in the 9th grade. I gave it up. I continued to play baseball all the way through high school, but I gave up playing football to be a broadcaster, knowing that's what I wanted to do. And then a lot of good things happened for me. I won a lot of awards in speech and debate while I was in college or in high school to go to college, and started working at the NBC affiliate in my hometown, my summer of my senior year of high school. And so I had a number of breaks because of what I had been exposed to at a very young age. I was very lucky that way. And by 1978, I married. In 79, moved to Baton Rouge to cover LSU. That's when I began covering the Southeastern Conference and in LSU in particular. And then they started a cable network of their own at Louisiana State University called Tiger Vision, way ahead of its game. Long before there was an SEC network thought about, there was Tiger Vision at LSU. And they had an athletic director that was a real visionary, had worked with Joe Robbie at Miami with the Dolphins. His name was Bob Broadhead, and brought in Jimmy Taylor and Paul Horning to do LSU football on tape. The games were live pay-per-view. You could do pay-per-view TV back then. And then you could run the re-airs on the cable channel of Tiger Vision. And it was a statewide thing. And I got to do that when I was, that's 1982. So I'm 26 years old and I'm doing that. And I was working LSU basketball when they were in their heyday with Coach Brown and making Final Four runs in the early 80s. And got those tapes out and just started sending them around. And in 1985, I got a call from ESPN while I was working at the CBS affiliate in Baton Rouge. They asked me to do the Duke Virginia game on January 5th, 1985. I still have the check stub of my first check from ESPN, working with Dickie V. And the game went well. It was sort of an on-air audition for me. And I kept doing all kinds of other things for them. Whenever they called, I answered, and I'd go wherever they told me, whether it was football, basketball, college baseball, PKA karate, top-ranked boxing, you name it, I would do it. And that led to me moving to Connecticut in 1986, and we started College Game Day right after that. As a matter of fact, people forget this, but after the 84 lawsuit, college football was finally available to cable TV in prime time live. There had been no college football other than what you saw on the NCAA Game of the Week on ABC for all those years. And then After the Supreme Court made its ruling in 84, in 1985, the games were able to be televised. And I started on the sidelines as a quasi-host and sideline reporter. And I worked with Mike Patrick and Pat McAnally that first year. Jim Simpson and Paul McGuire had done it, I think, the year before. And that led to me moving to Connecticut to host Gameday, beginning in 1987 with Beano Cook and Lee Corso. And as they say, the rest is history. Everything else that happened for me was a byproduct of that particular time in my career. And I moved home, but stayed with ESPN in 1990, built our house here in my hometown of Shreveport, and worked with Vince Dooley in 1989 on CFA football. They had the College Football Association games of the week back then. The CFA was a formation of all the conferences outside of the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And Notre Dame was also a part of that conglomerate. So I got to do some games at Notre Dame too, which was a real thrill. But they asked me to come back in the studio in 1990 to do halftimes in between games when Chris Fowler took over. I had left after the 88 season to do games in the booth in the fall of 89 because I was moving home. They wanted whoever was hosting Gameday to live in Bristol. I didn't want to live in Bristol. I enjoyed my time there, but my wife was from my hometown. I'm a Southern boy. I really wanted to get back home to my roots and take control of my career a little bit and not have to worry about doing, 2:30 a.m. Sports Center shows in New England during the off season. So it was a great experience. Every experience that I had there was wonderful, but I'm really glad that I took control of my career and moved home, built a home on a golf course, and have been happy ever since. And I moved on to Turner in the mid-90s, did the Braves and the Hawks, got a World Series ring out of that, worked the NBA playoffs for TNT and TBS and did Inside the NBA in its earliest days, and then over to CBS for the NCAA tournament in 96. And all that time that I was doing stuff at Turner, I was working the SEC Game of the Week for Raycom Jefferson Pilot, which was a syndicator that did ACC and SEC for many, many years. And they were very good to me through those years. All those Duke, North Carolina games I got to do in February were courtesy of them. So I've had a blessed life. I really have. I can't imagine not doing what I do. And I'm asked often, how much longer do you want to do it? And I'm like, as long as somebody wants me to, because it's a lot of fun. I have great passion for college athletics particularly. And on occasion, Fox will call me and say, hey, we've got a young guy that we want to break in on some NFL. We think we might use him next year. We'd like to check him out. We got a game in Green Bay here. Would you like to go up to Lambeau and do a game in late December? Yeah, sure. So I'll do that from time to time, but college football is my passion. And Spencer Tillman, as you know, and I have been together now for, we were 18 years at CBS, and this is my 9th year coming up at Fox, and it's his 8th. So that's a long time. We've been together now over a quarter of a century. We missed 1 year, the year I left CBS and went to Fox in 2014. I worked with Joel Klatt and Brady Quinn that year, and Spencer was finishing out his contract at CBS, and he came and joined me the following year. That was when Joel went up to work with Gus, and I needed a partner, and Spencer came and joined me there. We've been connected at the hip ever since.
What's the secret between your guys' chemistry and your ability to stay together for that long?
Yeah, we call it creative tension. It's we love one another. That's it, and it just chemistry happens. It's something that's, I don't know that you can create it. I think chemistry is something that it is organic. It just happens. But once it happens and you've got it, now you can have some fun with it. Now you can make it really work in your favor. And he knows what I'm thinking before I say it, and I kind of have a hunch what direction he might go in. And so we sort of anticipate one another's moves. It's that classic, he's the yin to my yang kind of thing that we've got going on. And we have a healthy friendship, yes, but we also have a lot of things in common. Spencer wanted to be in broadcasting while he was a player, so much so that he prepared for it in college. And when he was picked up as a free agent with the Oilers after winning a Super Bowl in San Francisco, he didn't think he was going to be picked up. He thought he was out of football. But Jerry Glanville wanted to bring him in for leadership purposes. And Spencer knew he had a chance to make more money as a player than he would in broadcasting. But that year, I was still working at ESPN, and they had him fly to New York to do an audition with me for a potential opportunity as an analyst. Well, we did it, and we met each other in New York. It went really well. But then all of a sudden his phone rang, and it was Glanville saying, hey, Channel 2, you want to come play? And so he went and picked up some major bucks for a couple of more years with the Oilers in like 93, I think it was. That was the team that lost the big lead to Buffalo in the playoff game. He was on that team with Jack Pardee. And so he played on that team, made a little extra money, and he went over to, after he completed his time with the Oilers, he was hired by WABC in New York. He was working weekends at Channel 2 and Channel 7, I'm sure, I meant to say, Channel 7 in New York. And that was about the time I was hired at CBS. And I was working with Lou Holtz and Craig James on the College Football Today. And Lou got the job at South Carolina, and Craig got bumped up to the NFL Today. And we needed somebody. And a new executive producer came in named Terry Ewert. And Terry knew of my work, and he knew of Spencer's. And he thought Spencer would be great, not knowing that he and I already knew one another and that I had done an audition with him like 4 years earlier, something like that. And so we connected in the studio at CBS right away. He had at the time 3 young daughters, soon to have a 4th. I had 2 young daughters. His wife, Rita, and my wife, Terry, became really good friends. During Thanksgiving week, our families each would come up. We'd go to the Macy's Day Parade together. We'd go to a Broadway musical or something together. We just connected as a family. And, girl dads are connected. I mean, if you've got nothing but girls in your life, you kind of understand the plight of the other guy. So I think it was the friendship off the air that really funneled the chemistry on in many, many ways. But we met by chance the first time, and he was hired to join me quite by chance. So, there's someone else at work there sometimes. And we just became fast friends, and the chemistry was automatic. And CBS used us both in the booth for some NFL games as well as in the studio. So we got plenty of work time together at both venues. And after I got to Fox for that 1 year, and Joel got bumped up to work with Gus Johnson, when the question came my way, and I should credit Fox, they're the best people I've ever worked for. They asked me my opinion. They said, is there anyone that you would love to see us look at? And I said, absolutely. I said, I just so happen to know Spencer's contract is up. You might want to give him a call. And they did, and they consummated a deal, and we've been together ever since. So I'm about 8 years older than Spencer. I'm 66. I think he just turned 58, but we're contemporaries. We have those commonalities. And what we don't have in common, we listen and learn from one another. I think we're open to whatever the plight of the other guy is. What's going on that's affecting your life. I want to hear what that is. My self-awareness, John, my self-awareness was never as good as it probably needed to be on my way up, on the journey. I always thought it was okay, but there were areas where I probably needed to hear some difficult truths. And Spencer delivered some of those. And I think on the flip side, I think there have been times when I've counseled him as a big brother might, okay, about the business, things that you need to think about that were beneficial to him. So every honor that's come my way and every honor that's come his way, we've been there for one another. And I think that we've each extended one another's careers because we enjoy being with one another so much. And our broadcasts are so well received. People like seeing us together. And over time, that really plays well. If you view the business as a marathon, not a sprint, having a relationship with someone like that is very important. I've talked to many a great broadcaster through the years that have been at it for a long time, and people wonder how much longer they're going to do it. Well, how much longer you're going to do it probably depends on how much fun are you still having with the people you do it with. And we have a lot of fun together. I think that's the key.
Tim, before we finish up today, last question. What's the funniest moment you've been a part of in your career?
Well, that first game I did way back in 1971, you should identify with this. I'm thinking you're a young fellow. When did you know you wanted to be a broadcaster? How old were you when you knew?
13 or 14?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So imagine a 14-year-old, all right, with his first broadcast coming, and you're driving to the high school stadium, which looks like, a Super Bowl stadium because it's your first high school football game. You're going to be carrying some equipment up to your booth. And my dad is driving, and we're on our way to the game. And it suddenly occurred to me that this is my father I'm going to be on the air with. Now, my dad had a band, and we used to tour sack bases together when we were kids. When I was a kid, he was a young man. But he put me on the stage singing and dancing and playing the drums with the band when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. So I was forced into the public eye. He put me there. I had to survive. And I did, and I loved it. But this is now going on the radio to broadcast a game about kids playing that are a hell of a lot more important. Focus is not on us. The focus is on the team and the moms and dads of the players that are playing the game. And so as we're driving up, I've got my depth charts ready to go, and I'm prepared. I'm ready. But I'm a little bit quiet and subdued in the car. My dad picked up on that. And he said, son, are you all right? And I said, yeah, Dad, I'm okay, I guess. And he says, well, what do you mean you guess? What's going on? And I said, well, just driving here, it occurred to me. It's been on my mind a little, but it's really kind of bothering me now. He said, what? I said, well, listen, everybody's going to know when they're listening to the game that I'm your son. I said, I get that. People are going to know that this is Hub Brando's son. My father's name was Hub, short for Hubert. And he said, yeah, they're going to know that. I said, but at the same time, I don't want to say on the air, Dad. I don't want to call you Dad. I mean, that's just unprofessional. And it's embarrassing, frankly. He started laughing, chuckling, kind of like I am now. And he was like, oh, son, look, I get it. I understand that. Not a problem. Look, you can call me by my first name. Just do that. I was like, oh, man. I felt so much better. It was like a cleansing moment. Okay. And I said, well, thanks, Dad. I really appreciate that, because I'd never called him anything but Dad. So, but now you got to remember, I'm a 14-year-old kid. What 14-year-old kid that always had to call his dad and respect all the time wouldn't take advantage of being able to call his dad by his first name? I listen back to that tape every now and then, and I don't believe I started one sentence without saying, well, Hub, what happened on about midway through the first quarter, we had a commercial. He says, son, you really need to back off on the Hub stuff. Just say what you're thinking. Okay. Just say what you see. And at one point, honest to God, after he told me that, we're coming out of a break, and there's this big play, like a 60-yard touchdown pass. And again, I was 14. I was prepared and really professional. when I was calling the play-by-play in the second half. I did the color in the first half, and we switched spots, and I would call the play-by-play in the second half. He wanted me to have the most exciting moments. So, and to get comfortable, to get comfortable on the air, I needed to probably not do play-by-play to open the game. So this big play happens, and he calls it, and then I just blurt out, "Dad, did you see that?"
Oh.
And about the time I said that, the iPad flipped on me there. About the time I said that, he hits me with his elbow in my solar plexus, and I almost lost my breath falling off the stool in the booth. That had to be my most embarrassing moment at the time. But it was good that it happened early. I got it out of the way in the very first show, and I knew the lay of the land after that, and was good to go. So most of America didn't see it or hear it, but it's a moment I'll never forget.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me. Great insights, great stories as well. Looking forward to hearing you this college football season on Fox with Spencer Tillman.
Well, thank you very much. I wish you continued success. If I can ever be of any help, let me know.
Thank you.